Is Tim gonna be able to be in the front?
Yeah, on the board.
You know, I don't know, he's got it on Friday up front.
I know he would like to be, I think.
He's just sort of holding on to see, the doctor.
But it sounds like things are going good.
How they are, he's over past Saturday night. Looked good, actually, felt really well.
Good.
Came over to see Dr. Lindsay. They've actually transferred him back to their service.
Thank you.
Well, I hope he gets to, because I know he enjoys it.
Well, I think the greatest concern is that he would catch a cold.
Graphs and everything in there, number of people. You know, you got to do it.
I'm sure he'll be glad to provide you with a list.
A little more susceptible to it, you know, where he's been away from people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's like little kids, if you don't get them used to, you know, building up an immunity system, they don't.
That'd be a good gag, just put a big bag, you can walk out, wave to everybody.
Yeah.
Plastic bag.
He's still wearing a mask when he goes to the doctor and things like that.
Yeah, one thing for certain, if he does that, he shouldn't be eating food. Eat any of the communal food. That can kill us. When was that? Did you get food poisoning?
Yeah.
It, shall we say, went through the
Yeah.
for lack of a better term.
Well, that pretty much says it all.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, that's enough description. The meeting of the Town of Abington Planning Commission to order. Mr. Boswell, could we have roll call for attendance purposes, please?
Mr. Anderson is absent. Mr. Wilson?
Here.
Dr. White?
Here.
Mr. Bradley?
Here.
Mr. Vidum?
Here.
Mr. Schuman?
Here?
Mr. Austin?
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. First on our agenda tonight is approval of minutes of November the 26th of 2018. You'll recall we did not have a December meeting, so this was our last meeting in November. Those have been furnished to you. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those? Are there any additions, corrections, modifications to those?
Yeah, I had one.
Yes, sir.
Under number 2, creative comprehensive plan steering committee. Last sentence said they would like to see Tanya Triplett and Jane Deering. I was gonna say on the steering committee as well, because that, you mentioned that Al and I are supposed to be on there. I just thought that would be clarification.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We'll add that.
Any questions regarding that modification? If not, with that modification, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So move.
Second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You pass those down to Mr. Boswell. If you will just make that change on that second page, I signed the last page, and that way she'll
Make sure it gets correct.
all right, thank you very much. Next on our agenda is a public comment time. If there is anyone here that would like to address the Planning Commission, now is your opportunity to do that. The opportunity to address the commission is limited to a 3-minute period of time. And if there is anyone, we'd ask that you approach the podium, state your name for the record, and your address, and then you may address the Planning Commission. All right. Seeing no stampede coming in this direction, we'll move right along. Certificate of appropriateness next is on our agenda, an application for a certificate of appropriateness. Colonial Square, AVA LLC, 207 San Juan Drive, Palm Beach, Florida. Owner, LK Addison. Representative, that's a certificate of appropriateness to subdivide property into two parcels, one containing 4.523 acres, the second containing 3.205 acres, proposing to demolish the western unit on parcel 1 and reconfigure the parking area on the northwest area of parcel 2. A variance has been requested for the sidewalk along Village Boulevard between the shopping center entrances. Property is located at 845 Village Boulevard in Abingdon, tax map number 017-17-9. Mr. Boswell, can you give us an overview of this, please?
Yes, sir. You pretty much said it for me, Mr. Chairman. It's a subdivision of the Colonial Square AVA LLC property. They are requesting a variance from the sidewalk requirement of the subdivision ordinance. We've been in contact with the subdivider, and we have taken a look at the subdivision plat. The only thing that we have issues with is the demo and the 2,000 square foot addition, which we would like to see a little bit more detail on. Building elevations.
All right. Is there anyone here who is a proponent of this project and would like to address the planning commission on it?
I'm Ubi Rhodey, Rhodey Architecture, Johnson City, Tennessee.
Yes, sir.
And I'm here representing the owner, Chris White. Mr. Addington couldn't come tonight, so I wanted to make sure one of us would be here. So I'm available for any questions concerning this flat rearrangement. We're basically talking about eliminating two non-productive stores and adding one at the end of the Family Dollar. I think Mr. Boswell indicated we needed sometime start looking at a rendering of what that is. It's basically a brick building again, 33 1/3 feet by 60 feet at the end next to the Family Dollar. It has the same green roof as the rest of the center, and it's very simple design. The theory behind demolishing the two units on the inside corner was that Mr. White felt that was an unrentable area, so we changed it into a park area, including this. Eliminating those two units and then creating some green space. We readjusted some of the parking, not adding any pavement, but just striking those areas that were required in order to accommodate the parking ratios for the two new parcels. In the future, and we've gone ahead and shown that in Mr. Addison's plat, we did not show it, there's a potential of adding a strip of parking next to the Food Lions store. So I'm anticipating a stronger use of parking, so that's available. Mr. White has indicated that he would pay that if we need to increase the parking in the future. Any questions?
What exactly are you demolishing?
We're demolishing two buildings that are in this corner right now.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
And then adding on the other
We're
side
adding
of the Family
this one
Dollar.
right here, the 60 by 33. Yes, sir.
Part of that space is used for access to the rear of the property, is that correct?
It can be, yes. It's now gonna become more of a pedestrian walk
Okay,
to get back to these parking places and make it more usable.
okay.
Right now, it's blocked, obviously, by the building.
So I couldn't tell what the ultimate use was gonna be after you tore the,
Yeah,
Cool.
it's just a green space, becomes a green space.
I like green space.
Me too.
The town has no problem with the variance on the sidewalks.
No, sir, there's no sidewalk on that side of the road currently. We don't feel that the connection to nowhere is the best use there, so there is sidewalk on the south side of the street.
Any other questions from the planning commission? Mr. Boswell, what he has brought tonight, has staff had the opportunity to
We have not
review
had the
that?
opportunity to review it, but we have had a conversation.
We've talked about it, and, the idea right now is this is a preliminary approval of the plat and the subdivision, and then when the final, we'll bring the rendering of the building.
We'll have it all put together for the final plat. For the
I just printed this off real quick to give you some idea of what we're doing.
Okay. Do you feel like staff has had sufficient information to make the recommendation that they've made, even though you haven't seen those for preliminary plat?
For the preliminary plat for the subdivision, yes, sir, we'll need to take a look at the proposed addition and maybe demo green space. But that can all be addressed during the final plat public hearing.
So I have a comment on the sidewalk. We've had a bunch of times where similar situations, somebody's come in and said, hey, well, there's no sidewalk anywhere near there. Well, if we keep giving variances, there isn't gonna be sidewalk anywhere. That's the whole point, to build it bit by bit, so in 20 years, you do have it connected through. So, you know, I don't, my opinion is the rules want sidewalk because we're trying to build a system in the town over the years. So just because there's no sidewalk out there now, you know, who knows what's gonna go on either side of this place.
Well, and that has been a thing that the towns had to do from time to time, as they give a variance, then there's a need for the sidewalk, then the town has to pay for it. So I agree with Scott.
If there were a requirement for the sidewalk, how many feet would we be talking about, sir?
Let me see how
Just an approximation.
Jason, can we see on the screen up there where the sidewalk variance, where the sidewalk, if the variance is not granted, where it would be?
It would be all along this frontage area.
And there's sidewalk where now?
I'll give
On
you
this side of the street.
This is the Google area one right there.
I missed the last one.
It's on the other.
On the other side.
Curve two is 391 feet.
390.
Which brings up the whole point too, does the town have any recourse, like say 10 years down the road? And they put sidewalks in and build, assess the property.
Not if you give them the variance.
Yeah, I think so. So what would be an approximate ballpark cost if sidewalk were required, 391 feet, do you have an idea per foot?
Let's see, probably 4 foot wide sidewalks, is that what you have here? 4 or 5 feet? 5 feet. So,
5 foot cement. Minimum thickness of 4 inches.
probably $2,500.
I'm sorry, how much?
2,500
Per,
for that section of sidewalk.
okay, 2,500 total.
Yes.
Any additional questions from the commission?
I have a question, these 21 proposed parking spaces on the far side, does that mean that you'll be able to access that building from both back and front?
Right. The pavement is there already for those parking spaces, so we we just wanna get them delineated, and yes, you can access them through the new green area, and that's gonna be right here.
And you can get in the back of the buildings too.
No, most of those buildings only have service doors.
Okay, that's, so you have the spaces, but not, I was just curious more than anything else.
Yeah.
So the idea of the subdivision is somebody's gonna buy one of the parcels. So the same.
I'm not
owner's
sure it's
be-
gonna be for sale, they're just trying to separate it.
Okay, because just, I've got a lot of experience with retail development and, you know, if you do split it, technically the Food Lion spaces, people will park in Food Lion spaces to go to the other stores since they're in front. And then that'll cause a lot of friction between the different parties, because they won't be able to enforce who's parking where, and it just becomes a big mess.
Well,
Not that it's any of my business, but I'm just pointing that out.
if you subdivide it and you have parcel one for sale, wouldn't you have to have a certificate of appropriateness for whatever went in parcel one to address parking for parcel one? Or not?
It's already there,
Well, I mean, parcel one's undeveloped, so.
No,
No,
parcel
it's-
one, here, look at this color one. This is the property line, they're gonna split it, so you got this whole thing and this whole thing, so it's Food Lion and Street.
Oh, okay, so parcel one is part of Food
Yeah,
Lion.
it's just the
Yeah.
labels that they didn't want to
Oh,
put on the
okay.
building. So if your parcel line runs right there, so anybody who wants to go there is gonna be parking here, another guy's parcel.
Which is happening now.
They probably have to
Right,
have
but
a
it's-
cross easement parking agreement, I think would be the appropriate thing to do.
Would you like to give consideration to this on two separate motions, one on the variance and one on approval of the preliminary plat? If that's appropriate.
I would move that we approve the certificate of appropriateness
For the preliminary
for
plat.
the preliminary plat, yes.
Is there any additional discussion on that? First of all, is there a second, I suppose?
I'll second.
Mr. Schuman seconded. Is there any additional discussion on approval of the preliminary plat? This does not affect the variance, is the way we're taking it this time.
Just the separation of the two tracks.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. Let's have a roll call vote on that, please.
Dr. White?
Uh,
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Mr. Vittum?
Aye.
Mr. Schuman? Mr. Austin?
Aye. All right, preliminary plat is approved as it is presented. Now the issue becomes the variance for the sidewalk that has been requested. Is there a motion in regards to that?
I would move based on the estimate of $2,500 that the variance not be granted for the sidewalk.
Motion has been made and seconded to deny the request for a variance for the sidewalk. Additional discussion on that issue and on that motion? If not, let's have roll call vote on that, please.
Dr. White?
uh,
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Mr. Vittum?
Aye.
Mr. Schuman?
Aye.
Mr. Austin?
Aye. All right. Preliminary plat is approved and the variance for the sidewalk is, yes, sir. Thank you very much,
No
sir.
problem, thank you. Appreciate your comment.
All right, next on our agenda tonight is, under the discussion section, is the comprehensive plan kickoff discussion. Suppose this is the time for the balloons to fall from the ceiling.
Let me get in balloons. But I would like to introduce Mike and Vlad from EPR. We did a community tour today. It's been a long day. We got a lot accomplished. Spoke to some stakeholders in the community later in the evening. And Mike and Vlad are here to kind of give us an overview of what we have to look forward to for the next 18 months.
Very good. All right, looking forward, gentlemen.
Thank you. Jason, you want to pull up the slides? While he does that, I guess I'll just say thank you so much for having us. We're really excited to be working with you all on your update to the comprehensive plan. We are with a firm called EPR, Engineering and Planning Resources. We're based in Charlottesville, Virginia, and just real pleased to be here working in Abington. We've been at it since 8:30, and I just had 2 cups of coffee, so we're ready to go here with you all. My name is Mike Callahan. I'm going to be the project manager for EPR, and I'm joined by my colleague Vlad.
I'm Vlad Gavrilovic. I'm a principal with EPR, and we're delighted to be here. As Mike said, we've worked all over the Commonwealth, Mid-Atlantic, comprehensive plan zoning, but we really look forward to working with Abington. We've wanted to for so many years. And it's a great opportunity, and everything we've seen today kind of confirms that this is a very special community with a lot of assets. So what we'd like to do with you all tonight, in addition to Mike sharing the overall project, is get your input as much as possible tonight.
So, purpose of the project is to update the comprehensive plan. We have about 18-month schedule. I'm going to go over all this in our slides. Purpose of today has really been to observe and learn. Vlad and I have been absorbing as much information as people can throw our way. Took a nice long tour of the town, and also had a stakeholder meeting earlier this afternoon here. Met with a few key folks in the town, representing some of the cultural institutions and businesses and whatnot. And so, yeah, this is our last stop today, and we want to hear more from you all, learn more from you all, so that we can go back home and have some good direction for the project setting. So I'll go through the slides real fast. Actually, do you mind hitting slideshow and then view from current slide is fine. Over to the left, right there, yeah. That'll blow it up to full screen. There we go. So, and I should also say, we're considering this kind of a joint planning commission and stakeholder committee meeting. Steering committee meeting. We have several folks here that are on the steering committee as well. I'll go over our scope of work, schedule, and then we have some discussion questions we'd love to get your thoughts on. First of all, our core team. As I mentioned, I'm project manager. I specialize in land use and transportation planning both. I've done a lot of community planning work all over the United States. I've worked in 27 states, many towns similar size to Abington, and I will also lead the facilitation and the public engagement. Vlad is kind of the principal in charge, providing oversight and direction, specializes in community design and land use planning. And then back in Charlottesville tonight are Jessica Dimmick, who is a transportation planner and engineer. So she'll be very helpful with those elements of the plan. Jason Espy, a lot of planning experience in Virginia. He'll be kind of a senior planning analyst, a little bit of a deputy to me, helping me on the project. And then Wei is a UVA planning grad. He's very good with analysis and mapping, and will be very active in the project as well. In the conversations we had with Jason and other folks here in the town, we asked, what's going to be really important in the update of this comprehensive plan? Where should we kind of, as we were thinking about the scope and schedule of the project, what are some of the things that we should focus on? And we've heard loud and clear that engagement, transparency, really getting a lot of people involved is critical. And so that's the first item up there. Secondly is updating the transportation element. We saw a lot of the projects that have been proposed over the years today. We know that there's a need to kind of take a fresh set of eyes to those and update that element of the comp plan. Also updating the future land use map is going to be really key, and then also economic development. Kenny today during the meeting we had was pointing to the importance of that and getting EDA input, and also Jason pointed out there's a lot of vacant buildings you want to repurpose, reuse, and how do you get some new uses into those, we know is also important. And then over lunch, Al mentioned, just having a plan that's, I think he said, both useful and memorable to people. And so we want to make sure that we hit all these areas really well. We've got 8 tasks in the scope of work. The first 2 tasks we've been working on here in January, project kickoff. We actually have a base map, it's in the car. Probably be more useful if we had it here on the wall, but we've got a good map template of the town, report template. You know, we have our site visit today. We've built a website, we'll show you that at the end of the meeting here. We've also built up a citizen survey. We anticipate those will go live this week. The next step will be to do an existing conditions analysis. You got a lot of information and, you know, that's standard in comp plans related to your anticipated growth and population, trends in, you know, business development, business formation. So we'll update all of that in the maps and charts that are in the plan. And then the vision and goals. That'll be kind of our first big public engagement. We'll have a community meeting, and we'll be with you all as well to talk about the vision, the comp plan vision, and the goals. After that, we'll move into policy review and update, and then the land use and transportation plan update, and then we'll do the writing and the updating of all the elements of the comp plan, and then bring it through to adoption. So this is going to be, this is a little pie chart just to give you a sense of level of effort. You know, big effort in the land use and transportation plan and the kind of updating the elements. We're a little bit less effort, you know, here up front with vision and goals and policy review and update. So really know that that's where you want to focus with that transportation and land use planning. And so that's where we've allocated most of our budget. Project schedule, we expect this to go for 18 months. We show here the tasks and how they lay out over the months, and also the key meetings that we anticipate being here for. And so project's actually broken into 2 phases. The first one kind of ends with vision and goals, kind of a framework of the direction for the town in its comp plan. And then the second part will be really updating all the nuts and the bolts of that plan. And just wanted to share a few quick observations. We're still, I was just telling Vlad, gosh, I've taken in so much information today, and I need some time to sit back and absorb it all and make sense of it all. But I think a lot of things were validated today, and we learned a lot of new things as well. You know, Abington is known throughout the state for the amazing historical, cultural, and natural resources and assets that you've got. And we saw your abundance of those today in our travels around the town. Of course, we also saw the theater. We saw some of the investments you're making to connect all those assets with the spur trails that come off of the Creeper. And we also saw some of the issues related to transportation and connectivity, which came up this afternoon as really key focus areas for the comp plan. So that is really all we have at this point for, I don't know, Vlad, if you want to add anything about.
I just want to take a minute on what is a comp plan, literally a minute, but I teach at the Citizen Planners Academy. It used to be run by Virginia Tech, now it's run by VCU, and Mike's co-taught with me, and our course is comprehensive planning. As you probably know, whether or not you've been through that course, state code requires comp plan updates every 5 years. A lot of communities will do regular updates every 5 years. Some of them will just do these rolling updates. Whenever there's an issue, they'll review a portion of the comprehensive plan. But occasionally you need these kind of big, long overhauls. And just to go back to the state code, 2 main purposes of a comprehensive plan, kind of public sector, private sector. Private sector is to let people know what the land use vision is, land use and transportation vision for the town, for their private properties, so they can align with it and understand what the town's desires are. And the other is public infrastructure and investments. So you as a planning commission, in particular, will review investments for streets, libraries, water, sewer, things like that, to find they're in substantial compliance with the comprehensive plan. It's called the 2232 review. But it really is your document. I mean, it's the town's document, obviously, but as far as the process and who has the most kind of in-depth working and knowledge of it, it is the Planning Commission. So we look forward to working with you, of course, supported by your steering committee members on this 18-month process to really dive in and see what the future vision is. Last thing I'll say is that it's purposely a long-term vision. The state code spells this out. You're supposed to look beyond your generation to your children or grandchildren and see what town you want to build for them and leave for them in the future. So think about that in your comments.
Yeah. Thank you, Vlad. So, some discussion questions we had for you all. First off, we have, I think, 3 slides in here. And we really just, we asked some of these questions already this afternoon with the stakeholder roundtable meeting we had. And of course, Kenny and Al were part of that. So we've heard their perspectives on a lot of this already. But we'd love to hear what you think about, when I pose these questions. And I think the first thing is there's a lot of good things in Abington. Obviously, we've seen them today. As I said, those natural, cultural, and historical resources that you've got are, I think, for a town of 8,000 people, just about second to none. So that's really impressive, and we heard a lot about how much people value those. I guess the first thing is that comp plan's not all about what do you want to change and do differently, but also about things you want to preserve and maintain and keep doing that you feel you're doing really well. And so I just guess I'll pose that to you. What do you value most that you feel shouldn't change as we move into this comp plan and working with you all?
And by the way, I'm just gonna write down some themes. Obviously, you got minutes, but wanna cogitate on some themes. And you wanna share the other 2 questions,
Yeah.
just so you know
Yep.
what's.
That's a good
We know your time is precious too, so we don't wanna
Yeah.
take too long, but just so you know what other questions we have.
Yeah, and also along the lines of kind of what's working, what's good. It's been 6 years since you updated your comp plan. What are you most proud of that you've accomplished in that time? It could be something that was in that plan or something not in that plan, but what, since that last comprehensive look at the town and planning for the town was done, do you feel most proud of to have accomplished? And then a couple questions here just on moving forward, what do you want to see different or change? First question there is, how can this plan help the town reach its full potential and thrive? Where do you feel the sharpest focus is needed? And then secondly, what's the biggest challenge that needs to be addressed in the town? So that's our set of questions. I guess, it's up to you all somewhat. If you want to take challenges first, that's fine, but I will put the first one up here and see if you have any thoughts on it.
The weather?
Today.
You gotta keep this going, that's for sure.
Well, I'm sure you heard from my wife about what
We did.
what you shouldn't change. She's a strong proponent of the historic district and to protect it at all costs and enlarge it. It's the driving tourism force in the town, I believe, that people come here to see the district, to walk around in the district.
If you look in terms of challenges, what the planning commission deals with, there's a significant challenge that has to do with the historic district that we've discussed here, and that is that you have a group, and the name I keep wanting to go back to the Board of Architectural Review, but you have Board of Architectural Review and what they do. And I personally think they do a good job. But you have issues with, I would say, conflicting ordinances, so that, for example, if I want to change my property, I have to come before the board. If I do something I shouldn't do, then the board can actually stop that. But if you have a blighted property in that same area, you have an ordinance that deals with blight, but the blight never has to come back to the level of what the board would require. So you can have, and we do have, properties in the old historic district that have been blighted, and the owners do just enough to maintain the property, but they never bring the property up to the level that a resident would have to bring the property up. And so you have that issue with the ordinances. And so when we did a survey, the EDA, that was one of the things that was said, is that there was this level of where some property owners did all this work and some others didn't, and they saw that as being inequitable, where in fact the problem is more an ordinance issue than anything else.
Mhm.
But it certainly sticks out when you have a blighted property that isn't brought up to the standard of what the residents would have to do.
The owner of the blighted properties,
You know, that, well,
love for
there's-
you
I was gonna say,
to
there's
take
more than
legal
one.
action. You give her something to do, she's an attorney too, she would love to have the challenge of defeating you, but it's, yeah, but there is that disconnect there.
One of the things we asked too, this steering committee was, what does the town do well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Some good answers.
I think the town has always had a good commitment to recreation opportunities for a town our size, you know, with the Coombs Center and the various fields and things we have. Not even talking about the sports complex, but everything we have is pretty good for a small town. And I would not wanna see that change for us.
Yeah, it's clean and well kept town.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that may, I don't know if this would be something to consider in the plan, but as you develop the sports complex, you're gonna have fields now on Russell Road that potentially could be developed and no longer, because they would not necessarily be used anymore for recreation. And that's those two fields are pretty substantial in size.
What is the plan? Is
I-
the plan to keep those or to?
I don't think the
incorporate
plan is to
it?
keep them, but I don't know how that.
They may need to keep them.
The reason I think you might not is because of the danger of crossing Russell Road and how those fields over in the sports complex would be, you know, you'd be out of harm's way. So I don't know, but I think it's something that needs to be discussed.
How far are they from the sports complex?
What,
Pretty close.
Couple miles?
Maybe a mile and a half, maybe. Not very- I would suspect that Little League would fight to keep every field they got, but,
Yes.
I don't know.
yeah,
I don't even
I
scab
don't have a
them.
good feel for what they need.
But again, I think that's, if we're doing planning, this is the time to find that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe a different use there.
Or other gold stars or challenges that you see?
Well, do something with the vacant buildings and the local economy, I think is the key. Anything we do.
Can you talk more about the local economy? What do we need to do? I mean, what's the issues with the local economy?
You need to, like Trump, bring coal back, but it's gone.
So
I don't
it's
think we
bigger
ever
picture.
realized how dependent we were on coal money.
Yeah, historically, our economy rose and fell with the economy of the coal fields. And you know, there's energy businesses are either boom or bust. And we were able to use tourism to sort of mitigate and prevent the wild fluctuation. Now the coal economy's gone.
Mm-hmm.
So we're having a hard time making up for that.
So one of the things we talked about with steering committee too is investments, you know, rather than just spending, investing. And if you look to future economic potentials, what kinds of things could the town invest in that might pay dividends for the local economy? Or, you know, is that too broad a question, or can you think of anything that's?
I think we were hoping you could think of something.
And I think the sports complex will
Yeah.
play a role in that.
Yeah.
But there are other things that need to be done, and I have no idea.
Well, talked about this afternoon, I think you're gonna have to look at the types of businesses you can recruit. I think you're gonna have to look at working with landlords to make, we talked about a little bit this afternoon, some of the buildings that aren't rent reasonably aren't kept up, and the ones that are kept up are too expensive, but I think you gotta start to look at what you're gonna recruit, because I think people have wanted coal to come back, and it's not gonna ever come back to what it was. I mean, you've got more people now involved in renewables than you have in coal, and you know, you're shuttering, even in the age of Trump, you're shuttering more coal, fired, power plants than you have in the past, and you're not gonna build any new ones
Yeah.
because of the cost, because it's cheaper to build natural gas plants and so forth.
But we still have met coal, you can't really make steel without.
Right, well, I was gonna say, you're always gonna
There's
have
always been a
that.
base of.
Yeah,
met
they're gonna
coal
have
out there.
that part of it, but to think that it's gonna come back and you're gonna have all this investment
Right.
at some point because of a cycle, that's not gonna happen. But you're right, it's never going away, because the coal that they mine here is high-grade met coal.
Yeah.
But it's deep coal too, and it's expensive coal to get to, and it's,
Yeah, I mean, it's,
so,
May I say something real quick? I'm on the steering committee. And sort of from a perspective, I'm in my early 30s. And in speaking with a lot of my friends who live, let's say New York City or kind of all over these larger metropolitan areas, as they're looking at settling down and getting families, they don't want to live in the city any longer. And I have friends that live in Abingdon. One is a project manager for Microsoft. I have another friend who's an editor for a company in Washington, D.C. And the thing they love about Abingdon is obviously the cost of living is a lot less, and so it makes it easier to raise a family. But also, you have good schools at a very reasonable rate. The public schools are good, the private schools are good. But something that I feel like will be a key objective for towns like Abingdon and Abingdon is really looking at increasing the amenities that it offers to people that can maybe work remotely and are looking at a town a little differently than people did maybe in the past. They're really looking at not what the local economy is, but what sort of luxury amenities can it provide? Is it walkable?
Mhm.
Is there attractive and affordable housing? Are there good schools? And I feel like that'll be the key factor for the town moving forward, is really appealing to that demographic,
Yeah.
because that's sort of the future. And those are, you look at all the economic trends, that's the economy is consolidating in urban environments. And so I think you're gonna start seeing those as the economic hubs, but then with smaller towns being sort of the residences for the people that still work in the city and commute remotely.
That's a really good point, and yeah, I think what you're describing is a little bit, building a high quality life, a great place that people
Right.
want to be in, and then economic development kind of following that. I also think, homegrown economic, jobs, and because what you're describing is a loss of kind of your economic base. Seem to replace that and rebuild that. Tourism's part of that, and you have some other industries that are part of that, but also building up some new industries and perhaps homegrown. Tanya described today during the tour a couple examples to me of businesses that have started here and are doing quite well. And so I think you have such a great quality of life and so many assets. Some of those are a legacy from when coal was really strong. We learned that today. A lot of your arts and cultural institutions are a result of that time. But those things can, I think, fuel your economic development in the future. And then we also saw some really specific projects that could help in this regard, some of the connectivity, some of the infrastructure improvements that have been proposed. So we're already thinking about this. Some things have been seeded today. I don't have all the answers for you right now, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's
if
very
you figure out a
important.
way to solve the traffic problem of having only two east-west, west-east roads
Yeah,
running through town, and how we can cut down traffic
yeah.
on those two, you're geniuses, but run that through.
Traffic is the lifeblood of commerce too sometimes, so it's I hear that, you know, merchants and business people say, don't bypass us because we'll die. So, and I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just saying, we hear both sides of it, and where, we wanna see where each community is on that spectrum, you know, are they choking to death with traffic, or do they just wanna slow it down, make it safer? They want less of it, you know? So if you could elaborate on that, Dr.
Yeah.
White, you know, just, what about the traffic?
Well, I mean, it's just all the traffic coming east and west has to flow down these two streets.
So,
And I'm not sure there is a solution.
yeah, not a cheap one, anyway.
I like the idea that we limit truck traffic through town, things
Yeah, we
like
definitely need
that.
to do that. Now, this is something that's happened in the last 5 to 10 years. We didn't used to have these big tractor trailers. And every day I see them coming through town. And many times coming down Courthouse Hill, they're flying.
That's just an enforcement issue, because
Yeah,
they're not allowed in there, but the police won't, ticket them.
Yeah, that's why I put that picture in there, actually.
They get
I
stalled trying
noticed
to make
that.
turns down on, coming off of Cummings on the main, they're coming up Russell Road, they're
Yeah.
all through town.
Well, and interestingly enough, they're not banned, you know, there's signs that can't come downtown, they're not banned because the traffic that they create, it's because the weight. It's just the road is structurally not, you know, as a civil
Yeah.
engineer, it's not built for that, and that's why, you know, at the behest of VDOT, it was originally, they said,
And the
hey,
turning radius is off
Yeah,
in
the
most
turning
places.
radius, right,
Mhm.
exactly, so.
You have the brick crosswalks and stuff, which, yeah, that is a challenge, and unfortunately, your topography is gonna be a bit of a limiting factor, I think, in getting additional kind of east-west connectivity.
But the trucks now can be stopped. There are ways
Yes.
they can avoid town, and it'd probably be easier on them, be a little bit longer.
The only time that would not be true is when they close Interstate 81 and they reroute trucks through town because it's Highway 11. That's, otherwise, I can't see any reason.
Or they put tolls on Interstate 81 and force all of that
We're
down.
all on to 11 now,
Exactly.
yeah.
What,
It's a
$39,
risk.
did I see that as an estimate?
Yeah.
The tolls?
No, I echo your comments, and I'm thinking about, you know, what makes Abingdon so attractive, and I think it's that small town atmosphere, and there's a fine line between being able to provide the amenities to the general public in the town, and I think we have tended to emphasize the smaller shops and the local businesses, and I see some of the folks back there behind you that have done a tremendous job in doing that, and it gives you that small town atmosphere. If you want to go to a larger city, we know what we're expecting there, and we don't have that in Abingdon. And so I think it's important to continue.
Well, good, so we've heard a lot, I guess, haven't heard as much on this question. What are, you know, your comp plan in 2013, there were several things that it called for, and I don't have an inventory of things you've done and things that are in progress, things that aren't done, but, you know, what are some of the things that you feel most proud of that this town's accomplished since that last comp plan?
One thing I would say is a hospital demolition and replacing it with the KVAT office building has been, I think, a big thing for the town. I think had that not happened and the hospital been blighted, that would have been unfortunate. That was not part of the comprehensive plan, but it has happened since 2013.
But a critical project to put a lot of employees right in the heart of the town.
And a lot of the vacancy buildings may also have to do with the same issue, the hospital moving out of town.
Yeah.
There were a lot of medical offices, a lot in town,
Yep.
and they all have moved out.
Yep.
And speaking of traffic, when KVAT came online, they never changed the traffic light there in front of your office. And it's like, it's ridiculous. It needs, yeah, the engineer needs to look at that and redo it, because the main movement is not at that light anymore. So it goes in that secondary entrance.
And as someone who travels every day back and forth, there are 3 or 4 other stoplights that need to be corrected. The one that Russell Road gives there at Walgreens
With-
gives preference to the Walgreens traffic not the main traffic. All one car needs to do is show up, and
Yeah,
coming out of
they-
Walgreens, and it turns immediately red.
They
The
need
traffic
a-
gets backed up.
Yeah, they need a traffic engineer to come in and look at all those lights because they're not optimized at all.
Now, one thing that KVAT building, the Food City Office building did is cut down the traffic on Valley from when the hospital was there. Because the traffic that comes in basically comes in when they start working, when they leave, and you don't have emergency vehicles on Valley
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah.
So which is, I think has been a good thing.
Got them on Main now.
Yeah.
I'd say the other thing, since 2013 probably, is all the music programs.
The January jams, yeah.
And then the Thursday nights and all that, has, I think, in my opinion, has really grown over the last,
It's grown our tax base, our meals and lodging
Yeah.
taxes have increased
yeah.
overall.
And that's something we need to maintain or keep going that direction, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we heard when we met with some folks this afternoon during the tour, just about the need to bring more people into the downtown and add some more vibrancy, that it was a little bit quieter at night maybe than some people would like it to be. I'm sure other people love it, that it's quiet, but sounds like that's helped. It's been a good accomplishment in that regard. Well, I guess thinking, looking forward with this comp plan, it's gonna look out 20 years. First step really being kind of visioning and goal setting. I guess what thoughts the folks have on these two questions? Where would you really like to see this plan focus? What could you all, because you use this plan more than anyone, this group right here, what could you all use from this plan? How can it help you? How can it help you in your work to kind of help the town redevelop and thrive in the future?
Or do you use it, how do you use the
Yeah.
current comprehensive plan?
Well, that's the problem. I don't think we use the current comprehensive plan because I think it was almost out of date when it was done. I mean, really, when you read it, it's hard to use it. I think specificity would be the biggest thing I'd say.
Yeah, we need to use it better. There are some towns, I think Waynesboro is probably a good example. They like tick off they got a plan. They tick off the boxes every year. They're like, we're gonna do this, then we're gonna do this, then we're gonna do that. And, we need to kind of think that way more, I think. Use the plan a little bit better.
So, implementation, good implementation section.
Other places, it ties into their capital improvements program. Very directly, it's like that we're gonna handle these actions in the next year, the next 5 years.
You almost need to take the plan and set forth a schedule for each goal we want to accomplish. Otherwise, it just keeps sitting there talking about it for years.
Yeah, do you feel like, you said specificity, do you feel like, you see this in a lot of plans that we've looked at? I was looking at Warren County, Virginia's comp plan recently, and just policy and project overload, like you couldn't do all this stuff in 200 years. Realistically, right? So it's kind of like everything that anyone wants to see happen ends up in there. Is that kind of what you mean by specificity?
You gotta narrow it down and and I think that may be a little bit of, hard to do, but I do think you're gonna have to prioritize it, or like Scott says, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, you don't want the whole blue sky list, and
Mm-hmm.
you want to have some prioritization.
Attainable goals, talk about.
Realistic stuff as opposed to.
One of the things, you look at the last comprehensive plan, had a couple of parks in there, the drawings were real nice, but the town didn't even own the property. That just made no sense to me.
So actionable.
Yeah. Basic stuff.
And one of them had one time wanted we would take over the post office. That the feds would vacate the post office and move down somewhere else.
Russell Road, with the tobacco warehouses.
Yeah, something like that.
Great idea.
Yeah, that's just not gonna happen.
Was there a particular thing that if, you know, you had, if there were no limits, you know, on resources or, you know, that you, if you could just make it happen, magic wand, is there something that you would change, you'd wanna see change tomorrow? Traffic, I've heard, you know, a new east-west road, if we could just lay it in there and,
I want the big trees,
but other thoughts on that, you know, what?
They've been cut down the last 20 years to nothing. And there's a lot of replacements with dogwoods. If you know dogwood, 20 years from now, dogwood's gonna look exactly the same as it does today. So,
Some more trees, canopy.
I mean, 20 years ago, there's just a few of these giant trees left, and obviously they're getting old, but the replacements are, like I said, there's a lot of dogwoods. And I think, like Wayne outside your office, remember?
Yes.
Huge trees, but the replacements for them,
Right.
they're either not growing, or they're some species that doesn't grow.
Right.
There's dogwood blight throughout Virginia, so
Yeah.
that's a challenge.
Yeah, but
Those are actually holly trees they plant, and they're just existing.
They take a long
yeah,
time to
it's just,
grow.
there's a huge visual difference between 20 years ago downtown than today.
Because of the trees.
Yeah, we had like the wayward trucker knocked the one down while the second spring, and just,
Now, the one across from my house, they actually replaced that with a good size, I don't know what the tree is, because I don't know enough about it, but there was a very large tree that came down and they replaced it with a pretty good sized tree. Unlike in front of Wayne's office, some of the, I just don't know.
yeah.
A little median beside my old house, there was a big maple. And they planted two little trees that were that big around, about that high. And they're a year old and now they're about that high. And, you know, you need a serious investment in planting some larger trees. But a lot of these, when I was on the planning commission, we did this probably at 25, on the tree commission, 25, 50-year project, that some of these trees had been cut to pieces, topped, and they were hollow, and there's a whole procedure the town goes through before it takes down a tree, but still, you gotta put something back in its place that's gonna be significant.
I guess one other question I have for you all is on the walkability, the bikeability of the community. I heard on previous discussion here with the site plan, you all talking about it. What thoughts do you have about that? You know, successes you've had or challenges, things you'd like to see different? Because we heard that come up a lot today.
Well, that pedestrian connector it's either being built now or just kind of finishing construction is a huge step. Urban path. The urban path, right? That's great. And then, of course, I don't remember how many years ago we did that extension under Cummings Street. Because they didn't think it was possible, and we talked to the railroad and all, and no problem, so. We're doing pretty good for that.
I mentioned today, I'd like to see a sidewalk up from, Walden Road up to the high school on Thompson Street, so kids could actually walk to the school. It doesn't make much sense not to have a sidewalk there.
Yes.
And then if you did, you could use that to go around to the baseball field and the Coon Center and
They've got they just put that sidewalk in on Stanley Street going around to hook up to the Coombs Center, so it's it's being implemented slowly but surely.
Someone made the comment in the prior meeting that we were asking about amenities for visitors versus amenities for residents. You know, what you do for tourists versus for quality of life. And he made, I thought, a very astute comment that if you build the quality of life and make this a great place to live, you will also make it a great place to visit. You know, be building that investment for the future, and it'll help the economy. I mean, this wasn't him saying it, but, you know, in our experience, the investment you make in your sense of place, which can be your most valuable asset, which includes the people and the relationships and the value they place in their community, to invest more in that can have the biggest return long-term. So it's not to put words in your mouth, just to share some initial observations we've had.
Yeah.
How are we with time, by the way, Mr. Chair?
We're fine, sir.
Well, I wanna share the website in just a minute, but, before we do that, you know, any other things that we should, our touch points with you all are gonna be, you know, every couple months or even less than that, and so certainly wanna make best use of our time. You know, anything you want us to know, be aware of as we start to go through this that you haven't said yet.
Let me just mention a couple of things, having come in and doing this interim thing. One of the things that we were actually talking about, do we need to amend the current plan to add some road projects in? Because staff has told me that most everything that was in the old plan is already in the pipeline, and that with the schedule you have with VDOT for some of the road projects, you are a couple of years out needing to put new things in the pipeline. So I think they have accomplished that. The other thing that keeps getting mentioned is basically, I think the town facilities. Very attractive town hall from the outside. There's some functionality inside. There's been discussion about the town shop and whether or not that 20 years from now is going to be adequate. The police department is in a big building that really is bigger than what the police department needs, but there's, you know, half of the third floor of the building is vacant because that doesn't function very well either. So I think there may be some need to look at current town facilities with an idea of what you're gonna need 10, 15 years down the road.
That's very much a comp plan issue. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can't do, typically with a comprehensive plan, you can't do the whole asset management plan where you look at the costs and life cycle costs, but we can identify the issues and, you know, maybe one of the action plans could be something like a asset management plan for the town.
Does that include the historical properties?
Well, yeah, the town owns several historical properties, as we learned today, so that would.
Ideally, you'd look at all the town assets and liabilities too, and just say, you know, some of these things are not functional, you know, need to be brought up to code and what that's gonna cost.
Well, and I think not only what it's gonna cost, but what the alternatives are.
Yeah.
Because I think there is a disagreement, for example, at the Fields Penthouse, whether you're going to spend a massive amount of money to make it exactly like it was 150 years ago, or whatever, or you're gonna do something that'll at least preserve the building, and it may not be exactly historical, you know, not exactly historical. I think that's gonna be, some of those things are gonna, they need to be decided, and what you're gonna do with historical properties. I mean, there's been discussion, for example, of whether or not to put those, keep them in the town or put them in a conservancy. That's something that I think is worthy of discussion. I know that's something Jane's interested in.
Yeah, and if I may, we find that the vision, goals, objectives, you know, the part that quite often people say is not that important, it's the actions that are important. But those kind of day-to-day critical decisions that a town has to make, it's very helpful to have specific goals and objectives to go back to. And the elected officials and you as planning commissioners can say, how do we decide what to do with this property? Well, what is our goal? You know, and what's our economic goal, for example? What's our quality of life goal? And then you look at options A, B, and C, which one meets those goals the best?
Yeah. Yeah, and we
It's a
heard.
blueprint for, why you do what you do.
Exactly. And we heard a lot of things, we heard a lot of issues today and also a lot of opportunities, like opportunity being these properties you own, these historic properties. And one issue we heard about was workforce housing, and the need for space for workforce housing. So through this process, we might be able to match up some of those issues with some opportunities.
Town of Benton repurposed the old high school into condominiums, apartments, addressed their housing issue, got historic preservation tax credits, preserved a historic landmark. It's a win-win for them.
Prices for work too.
Mhm.
And I'm sure EPR will be encouraging and soliciting public input as we go along.
Very
over the
much
course
so.
of this year.
That's
Very
great.
much. It's a big part of this, and in fact, if you want, you can pull up the website. We don't have to talk about it yet, but I'm done with the slides here.
Yeah, this is step one in public involvement, but we're obviously gonna do public meetings as well.
Yeah, one of the things that we heard when we were scoping the project out with Jason and staff, and we heard today from you all and also during our tour, is just how important it is to engage public and be transparent and really connect the dots too. We heard these things are important and therefore these are the things we're recommending. And so part of the way we'll get input is through a website. We built this website. It's not live. It's behind password protection right now, but it is going to be live here this week. Just a good resource on the, this is the home page. The overview page has a bit more about the project, the purpose of it, links to the existing comprehensive plan. The resources page has got the current plans, not just the town, but the county and also regional plans. People can come and kind of get informed about what else is out there, what's kind of direction locally and regionally. And then plan information, this is where this will be a good tool for transparency as things are developed, from draft vision statements to summaries of meetings like this. We can post that information here and people can kind of follow along as the project goes. And then get involved. This is where we will have a citizen survey. Did you click that before? I don't know that it's live yet. Okay, yeah, we're done with the survey, but we need to add it up here, which we'll do before we make the website live. The survey is done as well. And we'll have, upcoming meetings on the homepage. We'll inform people about when and where meetings are. We talked a lot over lunch about the importance of where we conduct meetings, how we conduct meetings, the way they're facilitated, being clear with the purpose. We heard the importance this afternoon of getting families and people with families to come out, because one of the things we heard today is that Abingdon could be a better city for families and children, a better town for families and children. And so we're going to be looking to get the whole cross-section of the community, as many people as we can get engaged as possible. And one of the risks in that, I think, is information overload. What are we going to do with just reams and reams of data and information that people submit? But what we tend to do with that is to try to develop some themes. Here's what we're hearing. These are kind of the pillars, the key things that this plan should be trying to accomplish, because it's what we're hearing from the public. And so that's what we'll come back to you with after we do the survey, after we do the first kind of round of engagement, is here are the themes, the key things that we're hearing. So it's a good point, it's critical, and we will keep our eye on the ball with that.
So as soon as it goes live, you will be able to get to the survey?
That's right, yep. Yeah, the survey is done and ready. It's in SurveyMonkey. It just needs to be embedded into the website. We were making some changes to it on Friday, so it's not there yet. But envisionabingdon.org. So tell your friends, family, to go visit. I'll let Jason know. My hope is we'll get it live tomorrow. I just need to do one last look, make sure everything's good, and make sure that survey's good to go, and we'll have it live.
If you put that out on social media, we can all share it, make sure it gets
Yeah.
out.
We're putting it on social media and putting it on the town website, link on the town website.
And we've asked each of the steering committee members to send it to their contact list, their stakeholders too, so.
Yeah. So, thank you, I don't have any more questions, but, we'll be here as long as you want us to be, and happy to hear more from you. If you have any more you want to share.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, concluding their agenda tonight, or is there any old business or matters that are not on the agenda we need to discuss? Any announcements?
Make a motion that we adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second that.
All in favor, stand up, let's go.
Robert's rules of order.
That's it.
The motion to adjourn is always in order.
I bet there were people who drove through that, really probably hadn't been. And how many of them saw necessities or some of the new shops that they'd never seen before.
It kills business.
No, it's a good day. No, we learned a lot. It's a fun sweet spot. Okay.
We're gonna count on you
You
to
want to
be
do
the,
some,
If you think you got a problem, what you have to
or it's traffic smoothing.
Well, I have a lot of back.
Yeah, yeah.
You want the horse people to slow down.
Yeah.
Scott,
I didn't know you was tennis, so it's good to see you there.
Yeah, you are, sir.
Thank you. It's great to see
I'll see you for a day or two, I hope I'll see you for a day or two.
Right,
Yeah.
well, unless you're coming to the frolics, you probably won't.
I am coming to Frolic, so I'll probably see you beforehand.
Yeah, one Wednesday.
Oh, yeah.
No, I don't know if
You let me know about it. So I
Okay.
started entering stuff, and my
Good to
wife
see
came
you.
by,
Thank
like,
you,
what are you
buddy.
doing? I'm like,
was that the foggy picture?
Yeah.
Yes.
Where's
I
my
did.
long day?
It's been a long day. I'm worn out. Are you?
Just getting started.
Good to see you tonight.
Good to see you too.
Take care.
You too.
Appreciate you
Good to see
being
you.
here.
All right, well, it's been a long, it's been a day.
About to miss you.
It's
Good
nice
to
to
see you.
Got anything before you head out?
Hey, I'm Al Bradley.
Nathan Berg.
Thank you,
Look
Alex.
familiar.
I've been around.
I've run into him somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm sure glad you showed
He's
up.
doing the
and helped us out.
construction on the new banks.
That's right, yeah.
His construction company.
I had to go move my safe deposit box.
That's right. Several people did, yeah, it's interesting.
I couldn't remember the old number, so now I can't remember the new number.
Oh, no, oh, no, that's
Yeah,
not good. As long as Leslie remembers.
Yeah, you
it's
actually
okay.
have to physically take it out and walk across the street. Yeah, because the insurance, nobody knows what's in their policy.
Right.
And so there's almost no way to insure it.
Wow, I never thought of that, but yeah, it makes sense.
And so if something happens, or if somebody claims something happened from point A to point B, then nobody could.
If you can run over crossing the street, I better move the deposit.
Right,
Now you're
you're on your own there.
Big windstorm comes after the car hits you. There you go. Ron Dickerson would be out there picking it all up. It was nice to meet you.
I am, okay, yeah, good to meet you.
Yeah, well, thanks for
Michael,
being
see
here.
you soon. Any recommendations when you're here? I love you.
I'm gonna come on a personal trip at some point. Yeah, we're gonna.
Send you my
I want to, I haven't, you know, I love my wife and I getting out and riding real trails. Several times, the hybrid trail.
There's some things
It's
that are
like an hour and 50
Close
minutes.
that.
Yeah, that's what I hear. The hybrid trail's nice, the bridge is like, the
Yeah.
rest of it's.
You know the story of that bridge, there were two bridges during the Civil
Oh,
War.
yeah, it's a key,
And
yeah.
they took out the high bridge, so they just took the low bridge, they didn't stop anything.
Yeah, yeah. So it was during the retreat to Appomattox?
Yeah,
so-
I own 100 acres, Sandy Creek.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the battlefield of Sandy
Yeah.
Creek, yeah, yeah, 100 acres there.
I do think Farmville is a town that's done a really good job of building on social media, good trailhead right now. Yeah, I
Marvel's
think
come a long way.
the entrance off the creek bridge is something we talked about a lot tonight.
That's what making the entrance invisible, it's not.
Yeah, it's
don't
kind of
know
tucked away
why.
in gravel parking lot, nice visitor center, but you know, the things you're doing to integrate it into Abingdon are really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the problem is, you know, all these roads are tight, it's like you need to do bike lanes.
I would suggest maybe we could just send out a note,
And I've like, so I
Those
live
types of
just
community
a
meetings and
block
stuff
actually, yeah, my backyard.
and
And so I take my kids with me a lot, you know, like,
it's the same,
3 and 5.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so you know, kind of
Keep it close.
So, yeah, and I would love to be able to go, you know, even go to the grocery store or something,
Yeah.
my bike, or we can just go over that bridge.
Yeah.
I feel like it's safe.
Can you take the urban pathway to the Creeper Trail and then get the Johnson Food City that way?
You would,
Yeah.
yeah, that was one great thing.
Yeah.
Or, and I was thinking, how did you do that? I even thought if you could somehow even have a bridge that went, under the old vehicle somehow, to be able to provide pedestrian access.
The train clearance, that'd be good.
We're building it basically the side,
Parallel for me, yeah.
because there's really not a good road. So Cummings, yeah, you have the railroad, Cummings goes across the farmer's market, is just on there, so.
Thanks for your support
It's easy to
today.
see farmer's market.
Oh, I think you did. I think you did.
The grocery stores are.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. I'm going home.
It's been a long day. We started here at 8:30.
I bet
Safe
you're-
travels
So,
back to
yeah,
Charlotte.
we're heading to Charlotte. Yeah, it's a lot of
If they're
information.
afraid to spend the
but-
night because we're expecting some white stuff, but they're in Charlottesville. so-
yeah.
We gotta get home. We spent last night, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're heading
Yeah,
home.
did you guys stay at the Mark?
No, we
Country Inn.
yeah, right. Save the town some more money. Yeah.
Actually, House George and David run a nice
Yeah, it's a
place.
good place.
And
I
full
mean,
of breakfast.
the food is good, they're really friendly, and they promote the heck out of town. All your stuff's over the
Yeah,
counter.
they're
Knowledgeable.
great partners, and when the hurricane came through, they were giving specials to hurricane people.
Oh, yeah.
And his employees came to him and said, we love these families, can we do more? And they did this whole drive, and people heard about it and started bringing food
Oh, wow.
and
That's
gear.
cool.
He finally had to cut it off, he said, no, we can't do anymore. When
That's
George
great.
rolled out the carpet for the hurricane evacuation.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Thanks very much, good
All
night,
right,
y'all.
we're gonna adjourn.
Bye.
Pocket neighborhoods?
Pardon me?
Pocket neighborhoods, have you done any work? She said something about it.
I have some opportunities to sit down and talk to her.
You mean like, cottage community?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got, yeah, I think we've done some ordinance stuff on that. But there's a nice example in Charlottesville, a couple of nice examples in Charlottesville.
So Abington doesn't have anything like that, that would be really.
Yeah, we're gonna take a look at the zoning, you know, this isn't a zoning rewrite, but we're gonna look at low hanging fruit
Yeah.
like that, or accessory dwelling units
Everybody had
that helps, add density and add
Everybody had
revenue to
everything.
Yeah,
people that
But
live
I think
downtown.
the biggest issue there is.
Saw a really good example on
Cross-
Fresno, California.
Because it is,
There's a lot of
crossing
really,
maintenance
really,
thing, but that's
Yeah.
just, I don't know that we can really
it would really
do any
just
more than
under
we are.
construction, that would
The
really.
one,
open
I
a
think
lot of,
Matt has already said that he'll
properties
properties
for you
for
to
the
have
signalization.
great little
I
communities.
mean, I don't think you can change it much more, but.
Some places don't wanna hear, but,
There'll be smaller houses,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
and really,
They kind of run a shared spaces.
yeah, that's one of the models you have. a simple parking area in a shared green space, and they're all kind of oriented towards the green space.
Yep.
And
Kind of like, co-house,
And you
some
never
of these
know.
make like co-housing communities,
Yeah.
almost shared, like we have shared kitchen space. or-
Yeah, that's sort
We
of
have
more on
that
the
for-
extreme.
We have an elder spirit that.
Oh, you
we
do?
didn't- Yeah, we didn't.
And that's
Okay, it's a
And
co-housing.
And it is a,
That's
yeah.
Half the
I
time,
forget what
and
that's.
the other half
what
off
it's
the
a-
other
kind
half.
of new
If you're
curve.
keeping 51% of them happy, I think you're
It's
being
sort of like a pocket neighborhood, but it's not, there's, the
Because
zones are a little different.
nobody's.
Elder Spirit has homes, apartments,
You hire a-
that you can buy or you
I
can
think
rent.
that
Okay.
Then they
putting
have
money
common
into one of
space.
these buildings.
The back of their
with no
facility backs
idea
up to the
of
corporate
entry.
trail, so there's steps
cool.
that go right down.
Oh,
to the
that's
middle.
really-
Yeah, and
that's
the
really
Y
nice,
park,
yeah.
remember we talked about the Y
Yeah,
park?
yep,
That
yep.
property backs up to that park.
Okay.
Don't have a use.
So,
Oh, yeah,
gosh,
yeah.
there's lots of things
Yeah.
we missed today.
I know, we'll come back
I
on
wish
that.
I'd taken them there.
Well, I think creative housing,
I will say that.
whether it's repurposing some of these buildings you're trying to find a use for, or it's a pocket, I haven't used that terminology, but I know exactly what you're describing.
I mean,
Or,
your choices are, you
ADUs.
come up with.
You know, as we heard 30
long-term use for it,
Test that,
or you
because
fix
a
it
lot
up and
of,
you try to sell it.
question of how you revitalize
Similar
downtown is
to
you gotta put more rooftops in walking distance.
Yeah.
You can't make
Yes.
It's an interesting
each and every
housing.
one of these.
When we were over by the town shop today,
Right.
we were looking at park and
Just
the
not
fire
really
department, but on the
economic
opposite side of the street, there are actually
Having
28
one museum,
public housing units that's
historical
run
museum
by
for
the
the
housing
town.
authority.
That makes
I did have the
sense.
planning district over to
And I
look
would
at that whole
argue from the
neighborhood,
outside,
and the distress level was not
makes sense for them.
so
because you
sparse.
already
So,
have the
like,
interpretive
there's been
center,
property
you have a
owners who've
staff
really
person
renovated
there.
or built new
You
construction.
wouldn't have to
So
hire
Mount
anyone
Archer Planning
else
District didn't
to
think it
oversee.
would score very high
You've
in
got,
in a
addition,
rehab
you can
of that area,
into,
because there were not enough,
you know, maybe
even though
a,
there's several other areas
office
that could use
for
improvements.
her and,
So we should have driven probably
classroom
that
meeting
that
space so
whole
that you can
neighborhood
have
as
groups
well.
in.
One of the things we gotta
And I
do
know
is
the
start
HOA
putting all
would
these on
like
a map.
that idea.
Because, you know, we saw so much today,
I
we
would
don't have a
argue-
mental
I
map
would
of
argue
where
the
they are.
backside of that
It's
Yeah.
like we were talking about now, opportunity maps, and then that connectivity really, you start
So
to
it's
see where you
almost
can
70
connect
years
the
old.
dots.
Yeah,
I would agree.
yeah,
I would
I think
agree.
that would be
Finding
one
first
part of the vision,
1950s architecture.
task, maybe pulling that together.
And once we renovate it, it's gonna.
Yeah.
Has to.
I think that'd
Plus
be
you
happy
have
for
those
everyone to
games
see.
that
Yeah.
come from.
It would.
You talk about it and everyone talks like you know where that is, but you may know where it is, but you don't realize what's right next to it, or you know.
Right. Yeah.
And I was glad that they
I
asked
don't
the
know if
panel
any-
tonight,
I don't know if
because
any-
I would have
anyone's
hated
ever
to
seen
sit,
it,
I was
but I've
really
never
not
seen
in
a
favor
curved
when they
door
came in here
like
asking
this.
for
that's one of a
variance.
kind.
If there's
I
already
forget now.
sidewalks on one
Miss
side,
Harmon's
why would we
people used to own that.
make them put
Mad
sidewalks on the
Harmon's
other
people.
side? If it's
And,
only
I was just
$2,500
thinking that I
house.
went to, the whole Tanya
It'll be
Day,
one that's
Old
free.
Oregon, or
A lot.
Oregon. It's got
$10 a
candles
square
and
foot.
holders on both sides, it's really
Yeah, I
big.
estimated
I'm gonna donate it to the town,
Yeah.
they pay me and
So
retire.
I
would
think he
prefer
said he
to-
was,
You got
do you think
vacant
he's
properties
going
on
to
either
buy
side.
it when he does the
Yeah,
cost
let's
assessment on it and
not
say,
donate
hey, I
it.
was
I think
wrong?
he was just put on the spot and.
It's
Because
still-
I
Don't you have
don't
one
want
of
you
those
to
storage
donate
parks?
and then end up sticking it. So
Well, I mean, I
Ten
thought,
I do want to
10 to
do it,
$13 a
because
square
it's
foot
something
is
that's
standard
gonna
for
be,
sidewalk
it's
space.
old.
So you're gonna have to do it.
My grandmother, my great grandmother,
And gutter.
maybe their people had
You know,
it, so.
maybe just doing a good crosswalk with a rapid flashing beacon.
Well,
And I know how passionate it's like.
To get them over to that
he
side.
had the other side.
And
Just
then
try to
that's
remember.
much harder, you gotta do
Yeah.
storm drain and everything.
Just a
We can only
well-marked
put that
visible
in.
crosswalk.
Again,
And if
it's
there's
up to,
enough people
it's
there,
up to the planning commission and it's up to.
beacon, just to get them onto the south side. Feel like
Be
he's in the
that
building.
True.
But
you got-
emails a day.
Shopping
It's up to them to
centers
open
up
it
and
and read
away
it.
from Main Street anyway, they're not visible,
Yeah.
so they
We didn't see it
struggle.
today. It was
Yeah.
not far from JJ's, right, it's from Masters.
Yeah, Walgreens,
Every time
Chet
you turn
Evans,
around,
on the
it's
back of the
like-
garage, they did turn into a
Yeah.
restaurant, but they was
Yeah.
behind
Then
it.
it's
They weren't.
mural on the
Mr.
side.
Rhodes said today about the
That was
buses,
Luke's, had the
but there's
mural.
nothing, he's got buses, I'm like.
We saw a lot.
What happened?
Guys, I did information overload.
Yeah, it's good stuff, but you know, but on the housing point, we heard from the director of the Barton Theater that
Extra,
they have
there's
like
gonna be
50
more problems in the future.
performers, 50
Yes.
employees that need housing.
For council.
You know, they have a third of their employees don't have a driver's license.
We're gonna put 100.
Right. They need housing near,
Yes.
near the downtown, so.
Yeah, you see, it's, so I'm actually in the workspace in So, like I said, some of the people that are in my space, they are working from all over. And by them coming
That's a lot
here,
of money.
they're going to want to spend
$400,000.
the money that they're earning, you know, like that in Seattle or
Yeah, I
New
know.
York. That was impressive.
Why are you putting my tax
And so
money?
that, you know,
Yes.
and you see little, even like White Birch and a lot of
That's
these
the
little
discussion I think
restaurants.
council
and
needs to
just-
have is.
They're gonna want
what do you
someplace
wanna
to,
do with
you know,
these?
Now, do
do
you
stuff.
And
do
then
anything with the Bundy Space Lab?
If you
Yeah,
say.
that's where I
you
am.
make
So
a
we're
decision
actually,
out of
so
the
Walter
return,
gets, we have
that gives
four
Jason,
offices
gives the town
up there.
manager, gives
Okay.
staff
So they bought,
a
it's an
direction to
architect
go
firm,
in that
they
we
bought this
know
building
we're
on
working
Main Floor
towards and we
of
can
the street
plan
level
for
floor is Morgan's, which is
renovations
a
that go.
very nice
Right.
restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And then upstairs, they created, small square footage offices, so you rent like a desk and a chair. And then they have common spaces.
Yeah, they have some reorganized it, so now they're basically just renting private offices. And it's been great for us, because we started.
I mean, I can't just disregard something.
Existing location.
Another, and so it allowed us to, without having to.
It sits back so that
Grow
you
and be
can
flexible.
sign out for it.
Which is
There's
great.
two apartments.
It's.
Yeah, and then they
left
have,
turns
say,
in,
where
left
they're,
turns out,
I mean, Matt and Allison are now
and it
living
gets worse
in
as the
the
traffic
third
picks
floor.
up.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
And then they have another, there's another office that's on.
They renting their house and stuff?
It's up for sale.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
How many people in the co-working space?
So there are.
I used to see hardly anybody running down that road when I was a little girl.
But there,
They put the
so it's
road off,
us,
it was constant
the,
almost. Every day,
Bundy and
every
Amy.
time, so anyway.
And then, there's a guy who does software development, and a lady that is an editor for actually Author Fool.
Okay.
I didn't know
She
you
just
guys
wants to
were
know
all
this.
started a couple of
Yeah,
days.
and so I think she spends half the time in DC, half the time
Okay.
here.
I have no.
Yeah, and then there's another guy
No word
who's a
except
project manager for Microsoft. Since then, he's
Well, I wish you the best.
Okay.
And we're thinking about it.
But it was really neat, you know, having lots of different perspectives, kind of, you know,
Yeah,
one
yeah.
common kitchen where you can get coffee, but
You got a couple of those in Seaville. My
Yeah.
wife's in one now.
Yeah.
It's a vault.
Right.
It's a new one.
So I think it's, you know, more of those, I think there'd be, you know, I don't know, do you know Drew Hopkins? The younger guy, they bought the building right next door to it, but I think they're gonna try to do something similar. Yeah, and there's another younger couple, they bought the Greenway Trade building, so they're doing some neat things. So there's a lot of younger, which is encouraging, younger entrepreneurial people coming in and fixing up some of these buildings, and
We are, I'm
if we
sure.
can kind of keep that
Valley
momentum.
Council will know, but anyway, y'all have a nice night.
You too. Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
y'all.
If you need anything, just let me know.
Yeah, I feel like
okay?
we
So you get something on your brain.
Kind of position ourselves not to be, you don't want to.
Thank y'all.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Good night. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Well,
You did
thank you for having me. I'm really involved in that.
Years ago, it's not.
Moving tourism.
I think the place could kind
I
of.
only heard that.
Yeah. I think so too. You have similar
When we were
assets, you know.
driving by.
So,
Yeah, is that the first time you've heard it?
wonderful job preserving.
Yeah, I don't
Stay involved.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, I'm on the steering.
Yeah, yeah, so, yeah. Yeah, I don't know what that would look like. Well, we'll be every time we come down, probably meeting with you all. Okay, great. Yep. Jason, we're gonna hit the road.
Well, thank you all so much. I know it was a long day,
I know, I was
but I
a
think
little
we
low on
did get a
steam
lot
at the end.
of.
Very efficient.
We learned a lot, so that's,
I
that was the
think,
goal.
maybe.
And it's got parking. But you don't have any of those three.
Yeah, you know, I was thinking,
So
I
stay
was
there.
really surprised.
But,
That's the first
maybe
time I've
we
ever heard that.
work session, they format with them, just come around the table and do the steering.
Can I get out upstairs or do I need to go out and walk around?
No, you
So
can.
the,
Go with the elevators?
Go out and go out the main door.
Discussion, just work session.
Close them up.
But unless you need the regular meeting for schedule.
Yeah, exactly, because, they probably don't wanna come and meet twice a month. You know, it's just a little bit easier, it's like, won't take. I know that, well, you warned, you told me about that, I know, and as I was standing there, I'm like, this is the best format to get them talking, because they're not looking at each other. you know?
But they're also used to reviewing things like the one item right before ours.
Yeah, yeah.
That's where they their job.
We're asking them to like think long-term.
This is once every 5 years, or once in their term that they might have to do these.
But they were okay, they still gave us good information.
Yeah.
They just didn't stay for that time, but.
Right.
They'll be interested in the survey results probably.
Yes, very much so.
Public meeting input.
Who knows?
My plan is kind of like we did with Warren County, to come back
Yeah.
after we get the survey results and after we do some of the existing conditions stuff, to come back to give a little bit of a state of the town type presentation. Here's where you're at, you know, and I'll be calling on you for some data probably.
Okay, I'll get you everything that I can get my hands on.
Good, yeah. Well, I'll get a little list together, but you know, they'll be very interested in that, I'm sure. So,
Maybe that 2014 study on historic properties would be,
Yeah, Cooper
because
Lane.
they kind of outline potential uses for each one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The ones you all know?
Mhm.
Yeah, that'd be good to know.
I don't know, I gotta talk to Jane and find out why she is so adamant about tourism not going into.
I know, I brought it up in the meeting, she's like, no, we're staying here. I was like,
Yeah, and that's not the
Sorry.
first time that I've heard her make that comment.
That's what the 2014 study recommended for that building, and I think it makes sense.
What does the tourism building become?
Well, I think it becomes the asset that we can unload.
Yeah, so.
I mean, I think there's some potential there for office space that people would love because of the location. I just
Or
don't think
it's a nice Victorian home, and then potentially it could be a single-family residence.
Yeah.
Or a bed and breakfast.
Yeah, bed and breakfast could be really good use.
Town will go into the bed and breakfast business.
Airbnb
Well,
now.
Summers Law office went for 179, that had much interest. It makes me wonder, you know, a house like Hassinger was to go on the market, what could the town possibly?
I don't recall what they were talking about for the Hassinger house in that study,
I don't either, not right off the top of my head. But we can send it out.
Yeah, we're gonna decompress and talk a bit in the car about what we learned, and then I'll get together a list of things we heard about, we wanna get our hands on.
Yeah,
but the town's been real good in the past at either buying or having donated these historic structures. They've been very poor in having any plan on what they're gonna do with them now that they have them.
Well, that's one thing we can identify, definitely.
Yep.
All right, guys, we
Gotta
gotta
go
go.
before the weather changes.
Yeah, y'all have a safe trip home.
Thanks, we'll be in touch, I'll let you know when the website's live.
Great, thanks.
We'll let you know how much
Appreciate it.
snow we get tomorrow.
Yeah, won't be as bad as the December one, I guess.
Well, I think it was a successful day.
It was, boy, it was a long day, I'm about to run out of gas.
I gotta learn in the future, right upstairs, a few things that came back down, I already packed up.
Sorry.
Oh, man, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, you found it.
I found it.
Okay, if you found, okay, good.
You want some more to take home?
No, that's fine. I gotta eat more today.
Well, I tried to make a point to keep y'all fed, I didn't want anybody to get hungry. So,
JJ's was something.
it's really good. And really,
He does dinners too, I think.
anything on the menu is really, I've never had one that was not good. Oh, yeah. Man, that place is fantastic. It's just a little bit harder to get into, the only reason we scheduled JJ's is because we do Jones and holidays.
Yeah.
Because we could call Jack, that he probably would, well, I don't know, I see what's going on.
Well, I think JJ's was better for sitting around a table and having some discussion.
I tell you though, foodies need to discover that, people just kind of rogue around and find this place. Well, we'll sample it as we come.
Yeah, we got a lot of restaurants to check out.
Fish tacos, shrimp tacos, things like that, those cafes.
I wonder what lunch we ate on.
Yeah.
Do you all have a safe drive?
Alright, guys, see you. Trip back, see you guys, thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Bennett.
Sending the paperwork in to Stacy.
Oh, okay, thank you.
It's on the agenda. It's kind How many flying monkeys